Alright, good evening and welcome back everyone. Today we're going to look at the round 4 game from the Kyoto Gion Open. Thank you so much for everyone who's been following along and those who've left likes and comments and especially the feedback. I hope those who said that they wanted my camera to be bigger are satisfied. There's a lot more Flipi in the frame, but please let me know if there's any other changes you want to make. And for those who are not aware what's happening now, round 4, we're in a 6-round tournament, so we've just passed halfway. I'm currently on 1.5 out of 3, so very happy to have come back to a halfway score because I was lagging from a loss in the first round. I drew my third game and now it's my fourth game, the second game second game on the second day. So I came to play on day 2. I'm looking to see if I can put a 1 on the board. And so far in round 1 I faced someone from Taiwan, in round 2 I faced someone from Japan, in round 3 I faced someone from the UK, and now in round 4 I faced someone from the Philippines. So really getting that international flavor in this tournament. Alright, so let's just dive straight into it then. I was black and white started with knight f3. Alright, fair enough. I have no specific prep. I don't know this opponent. Actually, as you can see on the screen, they're actually unrated, but their local rating is 1900. So according to their local rating, they're the strongest opponent I've faced so far, but I don't really know what to expect here. So I just mirror. They decide to fianchetto. Okay, so this is turning into a reti or a King's Indian attack or something similar. And here I'm going to take the center with d5. I'm going to try and build a pawn chain against their bishop to blunt it somewhat, and then I'm also going to develop. So out comes their bishop. I decide, okay, I can probably put bishop f5. So now actually my plan is to play a reverse London. So I'm going to close up here. I'm going to make a little cubby for this bishop to fall away. I'm going to close up this side. I can bring out these pieces to some degree in castle. And I have no specific prep plans in this position, but I know it's a very solid position and we're basically just going to play some chess. So white castles, I close up, also making way for my dark square bishop. And here they go with d3. I'm a little bit unsure exactly what they're planning here, but I know that at some point they probably want to end up breaking with one of these. So I just make my cubby so long so that if they break, well, they can't break immediately because I would just end up winning a pawn. But when they eventually do, I can put my bishop away. And I don't think I have to castle immediately. I have a bit of time. So here they go then, c5. I just end up playing c6. Again, I love having my little semi-soft structure here. It's not actually an opening I ever formally decided to learn and play, but it's one of the things that you just pick up over time. It's just so solid. You know, I used to play the French, for instance, and this is just the French with the bishop on the outside. So, I mean, this is a very natural position to reach, even if you're not trying to play a semi-Slav as such. Alright, their second knight, I bring up my bishop, and here they go. They're obviously getting ready to play e4 at some point. And something to mention about this opponent was, although they are unrated in FIDE, as I said, they have quite a high local rating. My local rating is about 17 something, so they're about 200 points higher rated than me locally, but they have no FIDE rating, so I'm not sure about their strength. But their time usage was not great. They played quite slowly. And for white, in an opening where they kind of get to, in a game where they get to choose to what degree they want to steer the game in one direction or another, I thought that they took a suspiciously long time. Well, suspicious, maybe not the right word, but they took a long time to make some movement decisions, and I didn't think it was really that necessary. So even here, rook e1 took a little bit of time. I ended up walking around quite a lot, to be honest, just waiting for them to make a move. So I castle, I mean, my setup is basically set, right? I'm going to play the kind of same first 10 moves, basically, and then we'll see. And here they surprised me. They jumped their knight straight into e5. So I don't think this is an optimal move. I mentioned this in my round 3 game. I mean, this is not losing. There's a lot of moves you can make in chess that don't lose, but it's definitely not necessary, right? They've still got a lot of things to figure out back home. So I figured the plan here is that they want to bring their other knight to f3. And so if I end up trading this knight, which I'm probably going to have to do because it's a very aggressive knight, it's a forward one, I want to get it away, they can retake with their second knight and still have a knight there. And so I have to keep on trading off, which is not the worst. I'm not against it. They have this position and options, so I have to respond in kind. So, alright, I bring my other knight out, and I'm expecting they're going to jump their knight across, but then they also just take immediately. And so I was surprised again. Now you haven't decided how to figure out what's happening at home, but you've jumped your knight out and then jumped it twice to trade off. Whoa, that's a little bit skewed. To trade off my knight. So you've taken your active knight and you've traded it for my passive knight. And also, although I wasn't really sure which way I wanted to take, I decided to take with my queen because hey, I get a free development move in. So I'm actually kind of developed now, right? My rooks are connected, all my minor pieces and queen are off the back rank. I have no specific attacking plan, to be honest, but White still has to make some plans over here, so I'm kind of in the lead, even though I'm black. It's a little bit silly. They took quite a while. They played Queen A4, and I wasn't sure what the plan was, but I'm aware that they might be trying to break down this pawn chain. I don't really want to have my queen, you know, hanging behind this pawn if something happens, so I decided just to move my queen over. This is really where I wanted to move it originally. I know they can move their bishop out at some point, but I can block it. I can actually also block it with my pawn and end up kind of, playing forward a little bit. So I'm pretty comfortable with this. And here they played e4, and they're not losing, but yeah, the engine also doesn't think that they're really playing optimally. The game in the last few moves has kind of swapped to my initiative, just slightly, 0.3 or 4 or something, but it's probably not what you want to see as white if you're the one that had the first move. So I didn't think here too long. There's a few ways this could go, but actually I'm just going to trade once. They took with their pawn, and then I'm going to drop my bishop back. This was my plan, to have my bishop safely next to my king, to have it kind of cutting into the board still. I've lost one of the 3 pawns now that I'm trying to blunt their bishop with, but I still have these two, which is the main point. And at some point, I can also kind of just liquidate the whole situation in a way that favors me. So really, really no big problems, right? Having this kind of structure, but your light square bishop not trapped, is kind of ideal. There's really nothing I can complain about right now. All right. Knight b3, I was also a bit surprised. I really thought that they would play their knight over towards their king. But this is actually, if you maybe look from the outside, I was sitting at the board when I was sitting at the board, and I was kind of just confused why white is jumping this way, but white is slowly starting to focus on this side of the board, right? So they've moved their queen and their knight over, the light square bishop's also coming here, so they're really trying to get an attack going on the queen side, and in that case, actually, this bishop of mine, which is so nicely tucked away, is a little bit out of the game because it can only really function on this diagonal. This kind of bottom half of the board isn't really within its scope right now. Anyway, I don't really know what to expect, so I decide I'll just put a rook on the open file. I'm just passing the moves back to white to kind of figure out what they're trying to do. I do see that they've got this little trick over here to skewer me, so I decide just to bring the rook up. And this is actually the first place where the engine says, actually that's not really what you wanted to do. So what the engine says I wanted to do is I actually want to play a5, which to me looks crazy because I'm losing the pawn to a degree, right? But it's because you end up skewering it against the queen. So if, for instance, if you take it this way, you can see here this is happening, so I can attack after defending this, for instance, and you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Also the other way, I can go immediately actually because your knight is all the way back. So it's not ideal for white to take that pawn, but I didn't look that far. I just thought, wow, white is already 15 minutes down on the clock, or was it even more? So I decided we'll just keep on moving. So I'll bring my rook up, and here I made my first kind of real inaccuracy. The rating doesn't change according to the engine, but I know that they're trying to get at this kind of pawn chain. They're trying to break down my queen side, and so all I probably had to do at this point was maybe just drop my queen back, here or here, and then kind of figure out how I want to put some pressure on them again. However, I decided to play b6 immediately, and then beautifully done by white. That is when they play e5. And so now they're attacking my knight, and they're uncovering the light square bishop onto this pawn, which is now no longer defended. And if they take it, they're also hitting both my rooks. So they're probably going to take with the light square bishop, right? Because they're trying to get the exchange up with the pawn, and oh man, this position is rough. So after I saw e5, I realized, oh, things are not looking so good for me. What am I going to do now? Um, I am attacking a bishop though, and so you're trying to think, what can I do? I can, for instance, I can just kind of sack one of these. I can let them take, and then take here, and lose a piece for, what am I doing? Lose a piece, a rook and a pawn for two minus for two bishops. That could be okay. I am kind of losing my pawn structure here, so I wasn't really a big fan of dropping one of my rooks this early in the game, because although we've now taken 20 something minutes in total, 25 minutes, I've actually only taken about 10 minutes or less probably because they've played so slowly. So I had a real think here. I'm trying to see, should I try and attack their queen, drop mine, take theirs. But basically, in any version I go now, my pawn structure on this side is ruined. So I feel like I've made a real blunder. Although the engine says there is a move to be okay, the fact that I focus so much on trying to keep this pawn structure against their bishop going and now having it fall apart feels like a massive failure on my part. In the end, the move I found was knight e4, and I thought I was doing quite badly here. I thought that white had a clear advantage, but the engine actually says, well done, this is equal. It did not feel equal at the time. But basically the point is, if I can just get rid of that light square bishop, everything's okay. Because if it's not coming down this file, I have time to move this rook over because this pawn's protected. I have time to play c5, if I want to, which also maybe gives me a chance to do something else on the diagonal, or at the very least I can consider just, kind of liquidating things here or whatever I want to do. But the trick is I have to get that light square bishop blocked or off the board. So, if they go wrong, they play f3, for instance, thinking they can just play f4 afterwards and get the attack again. Great, I'm doing fantastic. At this point now, I'm going to be able to take out the knight on this side, get another check, for instance, with my bishop. So, I mean, just to say here, and actually white is losing a piece. Alternatively, I could have probably just taken and then jumped, but I mean, this is obviously a terrible move. So white correctly took my knight, but now I get to trade off the light square bishop, and then I can take that dark square bishop. So now we reach this position. The engine says I'm actually doing great. I feel I've actually lost the game already because my whole plan with the pawn structure has gone up in smoke, and I still have no real idea about how to attack. I can keep that pawn safe for a second if they let me, for instance, but they can kick my bishop away. It's falling. I can't keep this pawn, so I have an isolated pawn and no real idea about how I'm creating any kind of activity with my pieces. So here they decided to take with the knight. Obviously, if they wanted to try trade queens, I would have maybe had to trade queens and then protect the pawn. But I'm happy. I'm happy that they decided to take with the knight because I really didn't want to trade queens. I feel like I'm on the back foot, and I want my queen to have some way to make some activity happen. So yeah, happy to see this. But now obviously also this is looking really weak. But I do realize that they've got nothing happening around their king here, right? So this pawn is weak, this pawn is kind of weak. And out of side, rook d2. Let's just get active. Let's try and move the focus of the game back onto white's side. I can bring up my bishop, I can bring up my queen, I can try and put some pressure on that pawn. This pawn is also weak. But white correctly actually just finds an easy move, b4. And now they're starting to push their majority. This pawn isn't falling yet. There's no real take discovery that's useful. And my bishop is actually slowly losing space. So my bishop is becoming more and more just kind of like some kind of long pawn situation. Alright, so I don't know exactly what to do, but I'm going to defend my c-pawn in the meantime. And here they play rook f1. And this is kind of what I was hoping for. I wanted to push my opponent to stop focusing on crushing me on this side of the board and get them focusing a little bit more on their side, because at least then I think I can create some space. Potentially they move their queen back and I can try and make something happening on that side of the board as well. Actually, what they could have done here is they could have played c5 as well immediately, and then things start getting kind of rough for me, but happy to see them get slightly defensive. And I go ahead and just move my king over. So this looks like a bit of a silly move, but really what's happening is that in many of the variations, they take my pawn with their knight, because if they take with their in a while, if they take with the queen, the knight could have been hanging, right? But anyway, sorry. Here we go. Here we go. They take my pawn with their knight, and then the bishop is hanging. And I'm happy to lose the pawn if it gains me kind of like a tempo move that I need. But I can't lose the pawn and then have to defend the bishop, because then I've just lost the pawn for nothing. So I didn't exactly know what to do, but let's bring the king in slightly closer so it maybe can be useful in some way. And here white finds a great move, c5, they've got their knight, the c4 square, and they're going to get into d6, obviously. And it's a great square for the knight. It's going to sit right in the middle of my position. It's hitting all of these light squares, thankfully not dark squares, I guess. And if I take it, it just creates a protected passes for them on this. So really, really good move for them. I can't really move my queen away from this pawn because I'm still trying to defend it. So I just try to swap it over. I'm wondering if, I can find something. Maybe I can trade off the rooks, or maybe they make a mistake and kind of oppose me or something. I'm just trying to find some way where if something goes wrong, I have activity. I'm really just trying to make myself have a few options. I could even look at this, for instance, and take the pawn from the back. I'm just trying to find something. So here they're going with the knight, and I realize that very soon they're going to cut off my rook on the back end of the board, and then I'm not, what am I doing with the rook? It's going to get chased down. It's eventually going to get traded for the best thing I can trade it for, which might at that point end up being a pawn. So I bring it back. I'm thinking maybe if we trade at least my queens in there, maybe I can do something useful. As I said, I don't want to lose my queen. I want to keep it to try and get the activity, and this rook is at least taking care of the light square pawn. So back, they do trade. I don't really know if this is good for me as such, but I know at least if they jump in their knight, I'm also attacking this pawn at some point. So, and I'm currently, pinning the f pawn. So I'm hoping, I'm trying to create some potential options for myself. Here comes the knight. I just move my rook up maybe to defend it quickly. I know they can attack my rook, and then I can move it somewhere. I can also try and pull a sneaky to put some pressure on their queen if they happen to move it there. But they find a really nice move. They just defend their pawn. And I don't have much here. So again, what can I do? Where can I find some counterplay? And I decide it's going to be with my kingside pawns. I'm just going to try and find a way to break through. Maybe find a way to get this dark square bishop into the action to some degree. I know my queen is already here as well, so I could maybe get some checks. I don't want to keep talking about trying to find a draw, but hey, if you can find a draw in a position where you're probably worse, it's not that bad. And now white found a move that I realize is actually really scary. So with this, they're attacking my queen. They're also attacking the h5 pawn. And if you look at this quickly, if they take the pawn and they come down, this is mate. It's also attacking this f7 square, which is also hit by the knight, so it's really rough. So if they take, I might have to take here just to try and find some way to alleviate the pressure. But then after they check me and my king moves up and they take the bishop back, then actually they fork my king and my rook. So this position looks really dangerous. And I couldn't find a fantastic way to continue. I can try and protect the pawn a little bit, but then I thought they might actually just kind of come through anyway. If they can get their queen in here, things are looking bad. My queen's obviously also hanging immediately, so I have to do something fast. So what I decided to do was to kind of call their bluff. So my opponent, this is not a tactical calculation. This is a observation at the board. My opponent is taking a lot of time on moves that shouldn't take them that long. They've now started to move their queen and rook back a little bit. They've gotten a little bit more defensive. So I had a feeling that they might be lacking a little bit of confidence. And taking my pawn on the side, they might get scared that they've missed something. I don't think they missed anything, but hey, sometimes you gotta make your own luck. So I decided to take the pawn on b4. This is not a great move. White is clearly winning, plus 2.4. I'm gonna have to lose something somewhere to stay alive, but it creates some complications because now if they take my pawn, I take their rook, and although they're probably winning that position, I can go here, and after they take there, my queen can kind of run. My king can kind of run around, and their king is also going to be low. Also going to be low. What am I talking about? Is also going to be in trouble because this comes with a check, and although I can't check here, I can try and check on this square, for instance. I can try and check, somewhere else, maybe at some point. Maybe I can find a way to make some counter attack. So not a technical calculation, very much just the overboard kind of a psychological one. I'm putting the ball back on White's court. They're getting lower on time already, although it's only moved 28. And they call my bluff, so to speak. They don't take the pawn, but they actually just oppose queens immediately. And I can't move because this is mate. If they check me here, this is mate, everything is mate. So I can move a pawn up and then let them take and I take. But they also have the option here, which comes with mate on the next move. And I don't know if they might not find it the second time around. You can only create your own luck so many times. So I decided to trade queens. Okay, the queen's got to go. I found a way to kind of protect my pieces in the short term. So my bishop comes down, my queen goes up, and after they attack the bishop, the rook comes back. And this is looking great for me, not because I'm winning, but suddenly my rook is the one that's active. My bishop can actually run out of here now. So the position is still technically losing, actually. White is still completely crushing, but they've gone completely the wrong way now, actually. So the engine at this point says, take your knight back, oppose it another way, build your advantage, bring your king in. But White is getting lower and lower on time, and with this activity now suddenly on the board, realizing that my pieces are the ones with range, they couldn't. So at this point they decided to trade. They blocked, trade, and actually now the game has swapped in my favor. So I was really looking forward to having a king pawn endgame at some point in the tournament, and I'm so happy that I had it in this game because this king pawn ending is winning. The only thing I really wanted to figure out was, so obviously their king is very inactive, mine is active. I'm trying to get around here to win a pawn and then to have a passer. The only thing I wasn't sure about was if they play a 4 and they start bringing the king in and they try and make some chaos happen on the king side, am I in time or not? And this is the thing that was a little bit hard to judge in the game. But thankfully, White made it easier for me because they didn't even calculate it. Low on time, they decided to run their knight, their king, and this is losing. I mean, I had enough time to do this if I needed to. Like, where are the kings going? But I could see clearly that in this position, after they get to a point where they can oppose me on that pawn, I can keep on running up because I am just one move too fast. I can get in here, and I don't know if you remember your opposition plans, but in this situation, they can't stop me. One of these pawns are going to fall. And again, although I thought that it was losing if I took this pawn and their king came in behind, actually I'm just too fast. I'm too fast back. So White is just in a losing endgame now, and unfortunately they're making it worse for themselves. I'm just going to keep on going. We trade off a piece of pawns. Here we go. And here I thought I found a really smart move. I play a5 first, so I block off these two squares, and then after I take the pawn, my king is also blocking these squares, so their king has literally nowhere to come in. But as it turns out, I could have just taken the pawn because, as I said, my king comes back fast enough. But yeah, so they decided to try and trade something. Um, I don't have to move any pawns. If they take, I take back. And here was the last thing I had to calculate. So this is a very instructive position if you haven't seen this situation before. White is the one with the kind of advantage here because we are closer to my side for queening. So they are able to sacrifice a pawn here to get a passer. And the move they have to play, if I fall asleep for instance, is g6, attacking both of these pawns at the same time. And whichever way I take, they take the other way, and they have a passer. So this is a really, really good kind of basic position to know, but it's also incredibly easy to defuse. So importantly, you don't take here because then they can push and you still have the same problem. I have to either push past or take. If I take, they get their passer. If I push, they push past and it's a passer. Very importantly here, you just lock up the position. If they take either way, I take back with my pawn. If they push their pawn forward, all the pawns are standing still. So I was super happy to remember this small pattern at the end of the game to lock in my win, because after this move they have nothing. Decided to trade one, move the king, and after queen b4 they called it a day. And snap it, we're back. At this then, I got a full point on my fourth round. I went from 1.5 out of 3 to 2.5 out of 4. I'm in the plus position, things are looking up, and it was a great way to finish off the second day of the tournament. Alright, so that's it. Thank you very much for sticking around, and see you guys for round 5. Ciao.